Just want to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another one of our Changemaker20s. I just want to first thank everybody who have been so supportive over the course of this journey with our events, from our sense-making conversations and changemakers, where we feature prominent guests such as Anne, as well as our courageous conversations that pave way for important conversations in the world of anti-racism and lasting systemic change. If this is your first time on any of our content, we created these platforms for every one of you to be able to chat with our subject matter experts in an open forum that you guys get to ask questions and speak to them directly. And so if you guys do have any questions, definitely leave them down below on our chat and hit that tab that says to attendees as well as panelists so everybody can be involved in the conversation. To kind of just get us started, just leave us a message saying where you guys are tuning in from today. And with that being said, today we have Anne Makosinski, who is an acclaimed inventor, global inspirational keynote speaker, and a driving creative force in the green energy field. Her current invention is a line of eco-friendly children's toys powered by green energy. And she's also known for the invention of the hollow flashlight, a flashlight that runs solely off the heat of the human hand, which is super cool, as well as the e-drink, a coffee mug that harvests the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity. Anne's also been named Times Magazine's 30 Under 30, Forbes Magazine's 30 Under 30, Teen Vogue's Earth Angel, Glamour Magazine's College Woman of the Year, and Green Tech's Rising Star, as well as having delivered 5 TED Talks, to name a few. Definitely a mouthful. So today we're going to continue our discussion of the topic of arts versus science and how we should question a traditional view of art being regarded as a hobby and science as a career. And so, Anne, let's start with maybe the creative process. When you think of the word inventor, it can be very daunting to think about. And what often helps when you're thinking of something so large is to really break that down and make it more attainable. And so, can you maybe share with us kind of your creative process and how you break it down and how that might look like for other people?
Right. Well, I mean, everyone will have a different creative process and different way to make things that works better for them. One thing that I do suggest straight off the bat is saying how can I stop global warming is a very big and broad question. So what I suggest you do, for example, in that particular instance would be to focus it more, to be okay, can I look at a problem I see that my parents or my community or my where I live is facing that has to do with global warming? How can I solve that one particular issue? Because if you can solve one problem that may seem tiny or only impact a few people that you know, it can actually ripple out and affect so many other people around the world, because a lot of people have the same problems, especially if it comes to global warming, just in different forms and different ways depending on your location. So I would definitely say focus on something that's close to the heart, some sort of problem that you see that affects you personally or people that you know, because you'll be more motivated to solve that problem if you have a personal connection. Creative process wise, again, it's very different for everyone, but for me, it's usually I get my best ideas daydreaming or thinking of ideas at inappropriate situations, social situations where I should be socializing at an event, and then I'll go sit in the corner and write down ideas, because I get my best ideas there. I don't know why.
Right.
And then I'll start sketching ideas later on. I have a sketchbook, markers, or whatever works people want to draw on their iPads. And then you start prototyping it. And you always need to ask yourself, what does my invention have, or what does my future product have that will offer something different and something of more value to the potential customer that other current inventions or solutions out there don't do yet? How can I offer more value than my competitors? That's a more entrepreneurial question to ask yourself at an early stage of the creative process, but I think it's still really important as an inventor to ask that, because you don't want to make something that's exactly the same to whatever else is on the market.
Right. And so to kind of break that down, you first start with a goal setting and you look at maybe a large goal, like how can we help the climate change within the world? And then you kind of try to find ways that can relate to home. So something that you can be a lot more passionate about, and then kind of break that down into something a little more tangible within people closest to you. And then kind of just start brainstorming of ways that maybe the small subtle things that you can start with and then growing from there. Am I on the same page?
Yeah, totally.
And so then how do you help turn that something into something tangible? I mean, what is the next step there?
I mean, it's difficult. I think that's probably the most difficult part for a lot of people. For me, I find it difficult, but also the most enjoyable part. Um, but sitting your butt down at a table and being like, I'm going to make this thing that I've drawn is like, it's a lot more difficult than I think a lot of people imagine it to be. You know, for me, for example, while I was building this toy prototype that has the flashlight technology this summer, I was working with other interns and other amazing students, so that was very helpful straight off the bat. We designed the 3D drawing model to 3D print the body of the flashlight. That took quite a few attempts because the 3D printer was not doing it right, or we had made errors. And then we were planning out how to spray paint it to get the design, because it's a toy, so it's colorful. And then I had to plan out where all the electronics were going to be and how it was all going to fit together. So, you know, it's a different process depending on what you're making each time. But my best advice is just like sit down and do it, like rip off the Band-Aid, because once you get started, in my opinion, it's the most enjoyable part. And I think working with our hands is something that's kind of overlooked nowadays and not as appreciated, but I think it's still a very valuable skill to have, whether you're a plumber or carpenter or anything. I think if you can do something with your hands nowadays, it's amazing, because most of us can't anymore. We just type in front of our computers. So, yeah.
So what if you do have a role where what you do is sit in front of a computer all day, science isn't your background, but then you have this idea, you know, so
Then,
what?
if science is in your background, you sit at a computer all day, I would suggest if you have an idea, start drawing it out. Doesn't matter if it looks like a kid's drawing. Draw it out, have some sort of dimensions on it, something that people could understand, labels, you know, clarifying what each part is when you see it. And then ask people to help you, because if you surround yourself with people who are slightly smarter than you or are better than you in particular areas that is not your strength, it's like the best feeling ever. And I just got to experience that starting last summer. Oh my God, I can't believe it's a whole year. But I just got to experience that starting last summer, working with interns who were way better at 3D modeling than I could ever be. And I was like, wow, I can like tell these people what I see in my brain, and then they can put it and make it into something. And so we can actually physically prototype that. So if you feel like I have these strengths, but I'm missing these, find people who can help you so you can actually make something.
Create the idea, right? Manifest it, sorry. And so with that being said, how do you really get over that first hurdle of saying, you know, it's probably been done. What can I do since I'm maybe insignificant compared to the bigger scope of things? You know, the mental talk that really holds people back from creating something. Like how do you, what is the self-talk, or what is the process to kind of get over that hump?
I don't know. Just don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself.
Right.
Try and be the best version of yourself. I mean, when I was designing these toys, I could have looked at all the other toys other companies were doing and be like, mine's not as cute, mine's not as cool. But I didn't. I just, you know, designed what was in my head, because what's in your head is the most original thing that no one else may have. So that's the most valuable part. So I don't know. I get really down comparing myself on social media to other entrepreneurs or like other people. So I just try and block all of them and not look at it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so then maybe as a person that's been doing this for quite some time, how do you encourage creativity in yourself, or like how do you overcome your own mental blocks when you're really trying to dig deep and find that missing piece?
It's a good question. I think for me, I've been just really lucky to have the habit of filling my time with creativity or doing creative tasks or things since I was really little, just because I wasn't, you know, hooked on my computer or a phone from a very young age. And most of my interests have always been in the creative area, whether it's, you know, inventing, creating, designing, filmmaking, acting, storytelling, writing. So that's just what I gravitate. I mean, what you have to do is you have to look at, in my spare time, what am I gravitating towards doing? Because those are the things you probably enjoy, which means you're probably a little good at it. So even if it's like watching YouTube videos, that means you're probably really good at picking out certain YouTube videos for your taste, and you should see like, what kinds of videos am I watching, whatever it is. But when I have a creative roadblock or whatever you want to call it, I think I just go and move on to do something else. You know, like if I want to start drawing a design for like a cartoon or an idea I have, and I start drawing and I'm like, none of these are working, it's all horrible, I can't draw. You know, I'll just take a break and I'll like read a book, feel inspired, or, you know, whatever it is. But constantly switching out, I think my brain also needs some sort of stimulation or to feel like it's being productive at all times. So I just try and keep learning every day. And if something happens where I don't feel creative, then I just take a break. I'm not trying to pressure myself to be creative. That's like the worst thing you could do. It should come naturally, depending what situation you're in.
And so it sounds like you do a really good job of always stimulating your mind. I mean, you're always doing something that keeps your mind going, which helps with the creative process. It's always on, right? And so that's actually a great tip, I think, just overall, being able to constantly keep yourself from having that gray matter, you know, scrolling on Instagram will definitely. And so last week you shared the importance of science fairs, and then you were able to create, or the process of creating your HoloLight, the first invention that you came up with when you were 15 years old. Can you break down how that process was, you know, as a 15-year-old, how you got started, where you took that, and then ultimately the final product?
Right. Well, I've been playing with alternative energy sources and Peltier tiles, which is what I use in the flashlight for a while. I'm half Filipino, so my friend in the Philippines, one day we were just like writing on like Yahoo Messenger or something. And she told me that she had failed her grade in school because she couldn't afford electricity. So she had no light to study with at night. That was really surprising for me, you know, being 14, 15, same age as her, and she didn't have something as simple as light, which I totally took for granted in Victoria, BC. So I decided to base my science fair project around a problem, create a flashlight that wouldn't require any batteries. I ended up making the Holo flashlight, which is a flashlight that runs off the heat of the human hand. Sorry, I've said this story like a million times in my life, so I can say it while like painting my nails or doing anything. But I don't really remember I was 15. I'm 22 now. It was 7 years ago. It's so crazy. People ask me like, did you have like an aha moment? And I'm like, I don't remember. I literally just don't remember what happened. But I had been playing with Peltier tiles for a while and other science fair projects in previous years. And then I was like, well, I'd use them on a candle's flame or the temperature differential of like the sun's heat and water. So I was like, let me try human heat, because the previous year, so I have to clarify, the previous year after I heard about my friend's problem, I actually tried to make a flashlight for her, but it ran on kinetic energy, and it used piezoelectric discs that if you hit these crystals, they produce a small amount of electric charge. It was great, but it was like any kind of wind-up flashlight, and it was really noisy, and I was like, nobody will want to use this. Maybe someone will. I'm sure it's maybe on the market by now. And then the following year, I said, instead of harvesting the kinetic energy of humans, let me harvest the thermal energy of humans and see what's that like. But yeah, I remember like the very first couple of prototypes I made were made with like plumbing tubing from Home Depot and like craft foam, and like it was, you know, it was a prototype, and I really didn't think anyone would be excited about it, but a lot of people were at the science fair. So yeah, you never know.
It all sounds like you challenged yourself a lot. I mean, you asked yourself a lot of questions that maybe kinetic energy was something that people would have gone with because it worked, but then you kept asking, you know, what else is there? Which I think is really interesting.
What's better? Yeah.
That's really cool. And so it sounds like you had a lot of stimulation as a kid just to kind of be curious as a whole. So do you maybe have any advice for the parents out there on how they can help their kids be stimulated, creative?
Don't give your kid video games. Oh my gosh. Be hands-on parents if you can. I mean, obviously you can't ask that of every parent. Every parent has like, I can't even imagine how many responsibilities and work, and then you have like a kid that you have to like feed and is crying, and like it's a lot of work. But if there's anything I could say, like if you're going to do video games, because eventually all kids are going to do video games at like their friends' houses or, you know, whatever. Like even I remember the first time I like played the Wii, it was like very exciting. But don't like make your kids entertain themselves, because when they have less things to play with, they'll be forced to be more creative with whatever's around them, and they'll start making their own toys, they'll start making their own doll houses. That was my own personal experience. But don't like let them watch like YouTube videos every single morning, because like that, you're training their brain to like need this stimulation and to turn off. You want to have toys for your kids. You want to have shows and entertainment for your kids that both educates and entertains at the same time. If you're not finding stuff like that for your kid, I don't know. I don't know like what kind of, obviously I don't know what kind of person I would be if I hadn't been given as many toys and like only watched operas and silent films as a kid. I'm sure if like I had a more conventional bringing up, I would be a very different person, and I don't know what kind of person I would be. But if I could give any advice to parents, it would be like, give your kid less toys than they're asking for, because just give them ones that are fun and educating at the same time, but don't give them everything they ask for, even though I'm sure it's very tempting because they're like your prized possession or jewel or whatever. Yeah.
I think after this conversation, I'm going to be obsessed by curating my own YouTube feed. Kids, my friends, like just obsessed with it now.
Yeah.
Well, maybe switching gears a little bit, can you talk a little bit about how maybe organizations can stimulate more creativity in the workforce or just their employees?
I would suggest, this is actually really funny. So I've been taking acting lessons in New York for a while, and one of my acting teachers was telling us that he's like sometimes hired by companies to do these like 1-day activity retreats with all these like business employees, and he gets them to like do all these silly things like stand in a circle, and then you have to like walk across the room or the circle making a weird sound and then stare at someone while you're doing it, and then they have to copy you, and then they make their own weird sound and walk around the circle. Or just do exercises opening up, telling the entire people you work with like a time you felt loved, or like all these things. And being in his class, we did all these exercises, and I felt so much more opened up as a human. And I would really suggest for corporations or businesses to hire acting teachers to come in for 1 day, 2 days, and do workshopping with all your coworkers, because it just opens you up. It's like therapy, but with all your friends, hopefully, if you like your coworkers. And just, you know, it's literally the most valuable thing I've ever done was taking acting lessons for myself, just to grow as a person, other than my interest in acting. So just, and also to encourage more creativity. I mean, here's the thing though. So like, it depends on your working environment, right? Because like, you could work at a company where on Fridays you're like, oh my God, thank God I don't have to see any of these people for 2 days. Like, I'm going to go on my weekend and enjoy it. And other people on Friday nights after work is done, they want to hang out and they want to spend time with each other because they're friends. So it depends what kind of company you have. But I think experiences are probably the most valuable way to bring people who work for your company together and to encourage kind of creativity, some sort of creative workshop. Maybe everyone gets in little teams and brainstorms ideas, and there's some sort of prize at the end. Adults still like prizes. Fun fact. But I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but that's just what I would suggest.
That's actually really cool experiences that you're sharing, though. I mean, it sounds like just having an open environment where people can feel free to express themselves, be vulnerable, and feel like a safe environment that they can fester ideas, like they can manifest it a little bit more freely, right? Just to kind of being able to stimulate themselves that way. So it's very insightful. But that is all the time that we do have today. 20 minutes always goes by very, very quickly,
fast.
right? I want to thank you, Anne, for being here today, and thank you for everyone who tuned in to one of our Changemaker20s. But if you do have any further questions for Anne, or if you'd like to want to work with her or have her speak at one of your events or for your team, shoot me an email and I'd love to get you connected. We will also be taking a break from our sense-making conversations for a couple of weeks, with our last event being tomorrow with our Courageous Conversations. We will be having Carlin Purcell, who is a certified emotional intelligence and neural life coach. Really cool job title, mind you, with keen focus on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. She has dedicated her career to helping corporations plan, develop, and execute successful, comprehensive diversity and inclusion strategies, and really focuses on the lens of human optimization, which is very, 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 very interesting. Once again, Anne, I want to thank you for coming in today. And for everyone at home, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the fall.
Thank you so much for having me.